It is Wednesday, February 18th. We leave here in a few hours. We're going to jump on a bus, which is like a friggin' luxury condo for real. And I think we got about a 3-hour bus ride, which puts us to a hotel right beside the airport. And we stay there for one day, get up in the morning, and fly halfway around the planet. And apparently it's snowing at home. Snowing. Oh. Snowing. I think I'll be going steelhead fishing right away. Me and Ruby, I think. Now, what's going on? You know, one thing we miss about when we leave here, when you take a break from your life, jump out of your bubble and look in, is when you realize that everywhere you go, everyone you talk to is happy. There's happy shit going on. You know, weeks of happy people. Then you picture going home and you realize, wow, there's a lot of deflated people at home in Canada Stan and the U.S. And it's rather frustrating, but you deal, right? But anyway, I was noticing when was it, yesterday, I think I read some emails or screenshots of comments where people said, you know, I've hunted and I've guided all my life, come from a logger family, etc. Never seen anything weird, never seen nothing. And I just did the math on it. Since I've been walking around in the woods by myself without a parent, it's been, for myself, I've been running around the woods in British Columbia, and then as I grew older, the Yukon, Alaska, Alabama, other various states, but I've been running around the bush for 47 years. 47 years running around the mountains and forests. And if you were to take all of my odd experiences and these people, beings that I have seen with my eyes, put all my experiences into one stretch of days, then it means I have gone 46.999 years without seeing anything odd too. Right? Just saying, when you put it in perspective, for people that go out in the woods, I've been in the woods all my life. I ain't never seen nothing like no Bigfoot. Me too, except for those days that I did. Those fleeting seconds out of 47 years, right? Hope I just made sense. What I just said made sense in my head. That thought. Now, what are we doing? What are we going to do? We're going to share some more voices. Not going to stop. I can't wait to get home and take everybody to the woods. Now, these are all emails sent to the wrong place. Unfortunately, but whatever, I've still got them. And I guess a few of them are probably sent to 2 or 3 of my emails, the same email, which easily explains a lot of that. Oops, read that one. But whatever. Whatever. It makes you mad. You can always get a refund at the door for your ticket to get here, right? We all know that one. Now, this is an email titled, Bigfoot Attack and Carried Person Away. Dallas Gilbert in Southern Ohio. This doesn't ring a bell to me, but let's get into it. And this is sent a long time ago. Dallas Gilbert, Bigfoot researcher out of Southern Ohio, was an online friend, a good man, who after the attack was changed mentally, as you can figure. Sharing this so you can let others know. Most are unaware of this, and it has to be shared. This account is from another friend who posted this on a forum. You can give my name, Mary Fabian of Pennsylvania Bigfoot Project. I've seen 5 Bigfoot and have numerous encounters, some not so nice encounters, but most benign. Dallas Gilbert, rest in peace, December 2016, quote, researcher attacked and abducted by a Sasquatch, shoots it, end quote. Pioneer Research, Dallas Gilbert passed away in December 2016. He researched in southern and southeast Ohio. Dallas and his research partner, Wayne Burton, were featured on their autobiographical documentary quote, not your typical Bigfoot movie, unquote. The narrative, says that Dallas Gilbert is the only person that he has personally known that has ever survived an actual physical attack by a Bigfoot. Dallas and Wayne were setting up a recorder, and Wayne, his research partner, was hanging back setting up the recording device while Dallas was stretching out a microphone cable and was hiding a microphone. This is back in the day before there were any radio-controlled stuff and anything that broadcast remotely. And it was being recorded on either a cassette tape or a reel-to-reel. They had a long length of microphone cable, and Dallas had gone to lay it out and check the microphone. Wayne was back at the recorder, and he heard a noise. And he said he looked up just in time to see a booger grab Dallas and twist his head, presumably to break his neck. Dallas went limp. The booger picked Dallas up, threw him over his shoulder, and started walking away with him. And Wayne didn't know what to do. The booger hadn't gone very far when Dallas regained consciousness. He had a Ruger Super Blackhawk 44 Magnum in a holster on his hip. He drew that 44 Magnum and thumb-cocked it and just stuck it up against something solid and pulled the trigger up around the booger's head/neck/upper shoulder area. The booger screams, drops Dallas, and took off running. That incident affected him, and he was never the same after that. No doubt. He went through a time of terrible trauma and shock, pretty much PTSD. Him and Wayne both had a tough time after that incident, and it affected him the rest of his life. But to his credit, though, he kept going back out there in the field, just like getting back on a horse that just threw you. And Dallas kept researching. The author was able to talk to Wayne about it several weeks after it happened, before he personally talked to Dallas about it also, and he could tell by talking to Wayne that it was an extremely traumatic event. Bear then added the few times he heard Dallas talk about it, he could never finish the narrative on the situation that happened. It really traumatized him. It really changed Dallas mentally, but nothing to the extreme. Comment. The impact of grabbing his head must have knocked him out, and he went limp, and the Sasquatch thought it had successfully snapped his neck before picking him up and throwing him on his shoulder and walking off with him. Before that Sasquatch hopefully died from his wound, I hope he told others or others saw what happened when he tried to abduct a human. There you go. First I ever heard of that one. I definitely haven't read that email. Anybody heard about that or know the man Wayne? Maybe let's talk about it. That sounds pretty frickin' alarming, doesn't it? And a first. Next. 2 emails. One follow-up after the original, which I'll read the follow-up first. My potential Bigfoot experience. I would like to add that the screams didn't always come from the same direction. It was almost like it was circling our camp. I had a feeling that it didn't want us to be there, but I couldn't bring myself to get out and pack up / walk the mile or 2 back to the truck. It was winter. There's a lot of ice on the tent in the morning, even though it didn't rain or snow that night. Clear skies. I also seem to remember being able to hear something walking around, breaking sticks and moving brush aside. This doesn't sound like mountain lion behavior, but I have no experience with them since they are either rare or extinct in my area. I've counted my whole life avidly and have never had another experience like this before or after. All right, moving on to the original email. Hey Steve, Trevor here, hope you're well. I grew up in the mountains of North Carolina. When I was 16 years ago, I went out camping with my girlfriend a few miles from her home. Big Bald on the Appalachian Trail. We took another trail down from there. I believe it was called Devil's Fork, that winded back down the mountain a bit and ended in a small field by a creek. It was just the 2 of us, and I did not carry a weapon with me at the time. The evening was mostly uneventful. We built a fire, made some grub for dinner, and around 9 or 10 p.m. we went into the tent to get ready for bed. I believe it was about an hour after that we heard some blood-curdling screams over and over again. It sounded like a woman screaming bloody murder. And it wasn't very far away. The field was about 50 yards wide both directions, and I think it was coming from the edge where the woods started back. This went on for a couple hours. I didn't dare leave the tent. I just told my girlfriend that we would be fine and tried my best to remain composed. I slept very little that night, and we packed up camp in the morning. I always thought that we had walked into an area that a mountain lion hunted, even though it is said that they do not live in these mountains anymore. And after listening to your channel, I can't help but think that I've been wrong about that experience all these years. There was an eerie feeling in the air that night that I cannot explain. I never went back there again. This is my story. I'd like to know what you think about this experience. I'm trying my best to remember any other details, sounds or smells, etc., and will send an update email if anything comes across my mind. Thank you. All right, thanks for the email, man. What do I think? I think the second anyone emails in here to all the people here through me, they know what it was already. That's what I think. That's what I think. I wasn't there, but from the sounds of what you experienced and how you felt, we both know what it was. Appreciate you, man. Next, Bigfoot and Curious Lights. Another one in my personal email inbox, not marked as read, ever opened ever before. Hi, Steve. Hello, my name is Nancy Brown. I'm a 73-year-old woman who contentedly lives alone in a very rural cabin deep up a one-way road in the Sierra Nevada mountains. Lucky you. I've been a lifelong nature lover, natural history student, and wildlife photographer. Thus, I'm an avid observer of all things around me. My home is in a dramatically diverse part of the Stanislaus National Forest, nestled close to Big Trees Park, home of the ancient giant sequoias, and near the Carson Iceberg Wilderness. My 76-year-old neighbor was raised here by his pioneer parents who trapped bears, fished, and hunted to make a living in this wild environment. He told me as a boy he once had been spooked when he heard an indescribably loud, howling growl coming from the nearby creek that runs down the heart of our canyon. Spurred by fear, J.L. ran 3 miles back to his family homestead and fortunately never again experienced anything so out of the ordinary or scary. Flash forward to me, 3 winters ago, when our woods were gleaming with 2 feet of pristine new snow. Out on my daily walkabout, I came up a series of large bipedal tracks with a notable stride of more than 6 feet between each footfall. They traced straight ahead along the trail for some distance, then stepped off and up a steep slope. With still lengthy strides, it disappeared toward the ridge high above. That same winter, on a fire break above the deep Stanislaus River Canyon, I came upon massive canine tracks that were much deeper and wider and longer than those of my 80-pound my 80-pound Labrador leaves. How much deeper and wider is my question. Other than the usual deer, quail, and squirrel sign, nothing else has been about. Indeed, no neighbor anywhere near here has a dog, a Great Dane, a Great Pyrenees, a Mastiff, that would boast such feat. I've seen wolf tracks in Montana, and these easily matched. The only problem is California has no known resident wolf population except at the Oregon-California border, 7 hours from here, meaning the owner of those paws were certainly haunting uncharted turf in the Central Sierras. The odd nature of these tracks only piqued my curiosity, so I researched Bigfoot sightings and found that Sasquatch encounters had been chronicled here in Calaveras County. Now comes the genuinely odd ending to my accounts. I've noted that in some of the encounters you read, inexplicable phenomena may also occur at or around these beings, and here's mine. My nearest neighbors have a vacation cabin that they infrequently visit, so most of the time it remains quietly unoccupied. And a few months back, I was awakened late by lights filling the woods outside my window. When I looked out, the neighbor's cabin had every light on inside and out. even in windows that, in 28 years, I had never seen lit up. And I was stunned because I didn't think they were in residence, though they have sometimes come up late. And while I stared at their extremely well-lit cabin, I became even more confused when all the lights simultaneously went out at once. I knew this is unexplainable. So I called my neighbor the next day to report what I thought might be a short in their old cabin's wiring, and he assured me that whenever they leave, they switch off all the circuit breakers. Yet since that first experience, I've seen this all cabin lights event twice more. There are never any tracks in the snow. And the power company tells me it's impossible. The electrician agrees. Yet, as a sober, lifelong non-drinker or drug user, it was all too real. Impossible, unpredictable, and yes, by the third time, genuinely disturbing. These observations surpassed me, as I've never looked for oddities in my mountain paradise, nor was I interested in the paranormal. For now, the serenity and the beauty surrounding me and the peace I daily experience here far outweigh any anxiety these unusual events trigger. Yet, my observations have made me a firm believer in the experiences your subscribers share. So thank you, Steve, for shining a light on this topic. Excuse me, yours truly, Nancy Brown, a.k.a. Waldo of the Woods. That's really bizarre. Did I read the part you described as a one-room cabin? One level? I mean, and anybody else, you know the drill. Anybody else has something similar like that happen, throw down in the comment section or email me, all right? Anything similar to that, okay? Appreciate you. Give us an update if you're still hanging out. Love to hear from you again. Next, another one sent to all of you through me. Bigfoot or aliens in Tennessee. Hey man, I decided to write my story. I'm 55 male, my son is 25, and I have 3 experiences. First experience around 2010 was backwoods camping out by Angle Falls, Big South Fork, Tennessee. I was alone. Estimate about 3 a.m., something shook the tent violently. I was in a one-person low tent. I woke and was staring at nothing but the sound of my tent being shaken very angrily. I controlled my breathing and I went quiet and heard nothing walk away or any noise whatsoever. I never considered Bigfoot or such, and I prayed it kill me by the neck if it was going to kill me and not drag me off chewing on me. There's a weird thought. I fell back asleep and that was the end of that. I don't have a gun. Oops, I was lucky. Bizarre. Second experience around 2020. The son and I were prospecting gold in Coker Creek, Tennessee. Coaker Creek in Tennessee. 6th night. We was woke to hounds chasing something in the area. I'm sleeping in a tent and my son was in a small camper trailer. So I do have a witness this time. 2 things happened. The first was two things happened. The first was a herd of something was coming our way. We were in the woods, so don't know why, but there was no sound of sticks, leaves, snorting, or any other sound. My son thought it was about 10 Bigfoot running together. May have been. I was staring at my tents. The hard, heavy stomps got louder and louder. I think he meant you were staring intently. I don't know. I was expecting for it to run down the front of my tent. I had to control my breathing. I felt I was about to die. And it ran through us like a ghost. Never touched anything. My son was looking out both sides of his trailer looking for it and saw nothing. We were both frozen in fear and trauma and did not speak. And a few moments later, I heard something running our way, and it was running in a creek about 2 to 3 feet deep in places. It was making fast ground and was not bridging water. Swish, 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 it came and ran right by as we were 10 feet from the creek. And at that point, I spoke. Was that 2 feet? My son said, yeah, but what about the herd? I said, yeah, I heard that. It was 2 feet, right? Yeah. I was so excited. This thing was running on 2 feet and did not splash or dredge water. That was my excitement. A minute later, I was terrified by what I heard. A minute later, I was terrified by a herd, and now I believe I heard Bigfoot and was stoked. That's the short of the story. I did a video testimony. If you want to make that link available for everyone, please do. We also believe it kicked one of the dogs and held its mouth and moved it, and more. 3rd was July 2021. My son and I went to a place on the Tennessee-Kentucky border to put out trail cams for hobby. We were backwoods and had a fire and dinner and went to bed. And about 3 a.m. I went up to pee. And on the way back, I seen red eye shine. I did have a red light on. Entering the tent, I joked that something was watching us, and we laughed and went to sleep. I woke to the top of the trees, roaring, as they were being shaken to hell. I woke my son and said, "What's that?" He said, "Take out your earplugs." I said, "I don't want to," joking, but I don't. I did take them out, and it was shaking the trees horribly, as the most powerful demonstration that had me locked in total fear. It stopped, and it was a new moon, and it was the darkest I've ever seen. It was deafening quiet. I'm just fixing the typos when I'm hiccuping here. And the creek nearby was also quiet, so they can turn off all the sound somehow. I remember thanking God that my neck did not make any noise, and I turned my neck. I also remember thinking I'm in a horror movie, and realized it's not a movie. We did not move or speak. And at 55, this is the worst experience I've ever had. As I realized the terror/adrenaline in me was removing my straight to fight, I knew I had to stop fearing, or it will give me a heart attack. I did not have a gun. All I had was a headlight in my hand that I held ready to turn on as I wait for this monster to jump my tent at any second. And I was resolved to see it before it killed me. I must see it. Maybe 20 minutes staring into the dark, and deaf by the quietness, another thing happens. Something slowly floats past our tent. It had no steps. It had a digital/cricket sound. The tone was he spelled it D-E-T, D-E-T, D-E-T. So deet, 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 deet. My son spoke in his breath, quote, "It's moving towards the camp," end quote, where we had a fire. I was effing done at that point. I heard it. What now, an alien? I knew I could not let it terrorize me anymore. I knew I had to maintain strength to fight by hand if needed, and I ignored it. When you're about to die, you learn to get real. I laid down, and if I heard myself breathe, I woke to make sure I had the headlight properly gripped, ready to turn on. I laid there trying to figure if we could walk out back to back. My son has his .22 pistol. I felt if we did not move, it had to make the first move. So we held our place. Sometime later, the nightmare I was in started to fade. Around daylight, a woodpecker spent all of an hour raising hell about something as it ran away. I knew we made it. I felt we did not die. I've had several near-death moments in my life, and this was far the most horrifying. I've given you the basics of my experience. My son and I both sat down and did the full story. You could share a link to my stories As you do warn people, I 100% concur with you. Do not go into the woods at night if you do not have heavy firepower, as I do believe they can easily kill you. We do visit the area, and we are gifting and such as therapy. It is important that you learn how to get back into the woods. It's important that you get over your fears. Thank you for a place to tell our story. I need to have my son write his story. He got brain effed bad. Jim and Matt, you can use our names. Okay, man. Send me more if you want, or who knows, maybe we could even have a conversation on here later on if you'd like. Let me mark this as look into, because I have a feeling you guys have probably experienced some more since you originally sent this. Excuse me, right? Am I correct? Probably. There you go. Here comes another one. 6 years of this, you guys. It's been 6 freaking years, or 5 or 6. How the hell do you do that? How does it take that long to make sure everybody gets read that emailed me? You know how many emails that is? How many witnesses? New Hampshire Bigfoot story. Steve, thanks for all you're doing to get the word out. This incident happened to me in 1974 in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. I was 14 at the time and would go deer hunting with my brother-in-law, who was 12 years my senior and a Vietnam veteran. He grew up in the woods of Wisconsin, and he taught me how to hunt and fish. And in those days, we didn't have much money, so we roughed it, camped out in tents. We were camped in Warren, New Hampshire, about a mile up a logging road that went up the side of Mount Mist. It was the second day of the rifle season in New Hampshire, so it was mid-November. Because of my age, we hunted together, and that first day hunt was uneventful. That night, we cooked over an open fire and got in the tent pretty early. We were in our sleeping bags and snoring away when all of a sudden I was wakened by this crazy yelling. It was so loud that it seemed to shake our tent. It sounded like someone screaming, "Yahoo!" over and over again. My brother-in-law woke up a few seconds after I did, and all he said was, "What the hell was that?" His immediate reaction was, "Where's my rifle?" We never had any worries about self-defense back then in '74, so the rifles were unloaded and in their cases outside. He scrambled out of the tent in his underwear and with his flashlight, and I heard him unzip the case of his rifle. He told me to stay in the tent, and I heard him chamber around. The whole time, this thing was screaming, "Yahoo! Yahoo!" I could tell it was moving along a ridge above us because the direction of the yelling changed. I heard my brother-in-law say that it was really moving, and I couldn't tell what it was, but it was big. He told me later that he caught a couple of quick glimpses of something, but he had no idea what it was. Whatever this thing was, continued to yell as it moved off, and we could hear it in the distance for at least 30 minutes. And needless to say, I didn't get much sleep that night. I hunted and fished in New Hampshire for 40 years. That was the only time I couldn't identify an animal sound. I've heard fox, bobcat, bears, raccoons, etc. Nothing even comes close to the sound that thing made. My brother-in-law passed away last year, and he never liked me to share this story outside our inner circle. I think he was concerned it would affect his credibility. Also, New Hampshire is really known for Bigfoot sightings. However, we were very close to the Appalachian Trail. We hunted there a few more times, but eventually stopped going that area. We never really felt comfortable hunting that area after that. Thanks for all you do, Steve. And there you go. Welcome to the club. You know what it was. So do we. Especially after all the eyewitnesses chiming in and sharing what they know to create the patterns of what we are learning. Next. Who's next? This next email is titled, email to all of you through me is titled, read, I don't know what I saw. All right. My name is... Sorry, had to blank out his name. My name is blank blank. I'm 66 years old. Please don't reveal my name. I got your back, man. The incident I'm sharing took place during the Christmas holidays when I was 14 years old. Forgive me if it's long, but I'm trying to be detailed. I was one of the lucky ones. My family had 4,600 acres for me to roam and hunt at any time I wanted. It was my grandfather's ranch. He raised Black Angus cattle. The property was sold after my grandfather's passing to a developer in 1988, then parceled out for 3 to 5 acre home sites. I knew every trail, tree, creek, and bog on the place. I'd do overnight solo campouts from the age of 10, never fearing anything. I was very comfortable in my grandfather's woods. I'd have my .22 and Bob. That day in December, I hunted the high pasture in the morning and had seen several deer, but only one scrawny buck. I returned to the house around 10 a.m., looking forward to Nana's cowboy breakfast. And as I neared the house, my grandfather came out of the barn carrying a feed bucket. "Didn't hear any shots. Did you see anything?" he asked. Before I could answer, he asked when I had left out this morning and if I'd seen Bob. Bob was a 6-year-old blackmouth cur, scarred and grizzled with tattered ears. Bob was Grandpa's constant companion. Unless I was there, or he saw or smelled a skunk, then he'd charge off after that skunk and wouldn't return until he had caught and killed it, and then he would deposit it on the front porch, his trophy. That day I watched my grandfather work around the outside of the house and barn, and several times he'd stop and turn. He'd look into post oaks and briars for a movement, sometimes calling for Bob. Sometimes he wouldn't. And as the afternoon came around, I picked up my possibles bag and my .243. Walking out to the yard between the house and the barn, I met and told Grandfather I was going to go hunt the bottom between the creeks. And he shook his head no and said, "Why don't you try the high pasture one more time?" But I really wanted to hunt the bottom. It was rich with life, deer, turkey, vermin, and the occasional hog. And I agreed to hunt the high pasture, but as soon as Grandpa entered the house, I turned and headed toward the old tree stand between the creeks. The way to the stand was through the trees and brambles so thick it sometimes blocked out the light, and the air was always still. The sandy loam ground was always moist. It made for quiet walking. You had to cross Little Sandy using a game trail, then a couple 100 yards through the thicket. I knew the way like the back of my hand. The stand had been built long before I began to hunt, and the platform was some 16 to 18 feet up in an old hackberry tree. Grandpa had killed the ranch record buck out of it 4 years before. I climbed and settled in, my back against a tree, sitting on a recently added bucket. The original bench had rotted. Sitting there, I could see the canopied trail I'd used to get there, and to my left, Big Sandy Creek snaked through the bottomland. A long shot from that blind was 90 yards, with most being 50 to 60 yards. The ground below me was cut with dozens of game trails. So to me, that's like basically wide open. For me. After about an hour or so, I caught movement to my left. There, standing on the high bank, was a doe. I didn't move. She was only some 40 yards away, and the high bank was just 8 to 9 feet below my blind height. I'd been busted by deer on the high bank before. And this doe looked right at me and then turned her gaze back to the thicket in front of me and below her. She whistled, stomped her foot. She would lower her head and then raise it again, and she repeated this several times. Whistle, stomp, and head bob. I tensed up and slowly readied my rifle. I was sure some old buck had caught her attention. I then caught movement in the thicket. The doe whistled, spun in her tracks, and hauled ass. Focusing on the movement, I tried to make out a shape. It slowly and only partially became visible. "Dang it," I said, "that's a cow." Just laying there in the shadows, black as pitch. I turned my head away and scanned the area, and a few minutes passed, and I decided to raise my rifle, look through the scope, and see if I could find and read the cow's ear tag. I needed to let Grandpa know where it was. But the hair was all wrong. black and gray and long. I thought to myself, that's a huge hog, maybe 7 feet long. I continued to look, trying to find a place for my crosshairs to settle, and then it happened. A hand reached up and placed itself flat against the fallen post oak in front of it. This thing was only some 40 to 50 yards away, and the 4X scope was clear, and I could see long fingers and black nails, and the brush blocked much of its body. Then I became nauseous with anxiety, and fear came over me like a heavy quilt, and I felt my strength leave. I was terrified. There was a gorilla in the thicket. My gaze never left it, but suddenly it was gone. That terrified me even more. Where had it gone? With only 30 minutes or so of light left, I summoned all my courage and climbed down, and no way I was staying up there. Gorillas can climb. There was no way I was returning home through the thicket. So I crossed the big sandy, climbed the bank, followed the bank to the old abandoned homestead, crossed over a few fences, then it was open pasture to the house. And once I hit that pasture, I ran like a gazelle. I could see the compound in the distance and every light was on. The house and barn were lit up like an airport, so I was happy. I may have begun to cry. And I burst through the side door, cutting through the laundry room into the kitchen. Nana and Grandpa were sitting at the table. "Gorilla!" I blurted out. "There's a gorilla in the thicket. I saw it." My grandmother rose, wrapped her arms around me. I'm sure I was shaking. "Howard," she said. My grandfather sat there staring off with pursed lips but said nothing. "Howard," she repeated. He said nothing. I figured he was mad at me for lying about where I was going to hunt. Nana told me to go clean up and eat dinner. She followed me into the bathroom, pulled the window curtains closed. That was strange, I thought. There wasn't another person to see in for miles. Besides, the bathroom window was at least 7 feet off the ground. And after I showered, I came into the kitchen and noticed all the drapes were closed. I asked Grandpa if he wanted us. I said us because there's no way I'd go alone. Did he want us to go out to the pole and kill the floodlights? He said no. It's not going to hurt anything to leave him on tonight. Now, my grandfather was a big hunter. He'd hunted Africa at least 4 times, taking elephant, lion, Cape buffalo, and many others. He'd hunted Alaska, British Columbia, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Oregon, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, and Idaho. He was a student of ballistics and owned dozens of rifles. He was also one of the coolest men under pressure I'd ever seen. Once when I was about 7, we were in the bottoms looking for turkey. Papa was carrying a Savage combination gun, had a 30-30 top barrel and a 12-gauge bottom. And as we neared the bog, a group of piglets began to squeal and ran in all directions. Then we heard grunting and crashing as a large hog charged. Grandpa pushed me behind him, raised the gun, switched barrels, aimed and fired. He'd never moved a step. When I came from behind him, I took 3 steps, touched the dead hog's nose. There was a single hole almost between the eyes. Sounds familiar. I only mention his courage and understanding of game versus ballistics because after dinner I went into the living room to join him watching TV, and there laying on the floor next to his recliner was a big flashlight and his Wesley Richards 450/400 double rifle. I knew better than to ask, so I drank hot cocoa. Grandpa sipped black coffee and smoked his pipe. When I finally went to sleep, it was fitful. I woke early. The sun was just breaking the horizon. I thought no one else is up. I opened the front door and the stink assaulted my nose. I pushed the screen door open to see Bob standing over a dead skunk. By the smell, it had given quite a fight. My grandfather came walking from the right of the wraparound porch with a shovel, and it startled me. He handed it to me and said, "Take that skunk to the burn pile before your Nana gets up." He turned toward the porch bench where there was an ashtray, a thermos of coffee, and his big light, and the double rifle leaning up against the wall. He'd been up all night. My parents arrived that afternoon to take me home, and I couldn't wait to tell them what happened, but Grandpa made me swear to say nothing. The memory of this is never far from me. Like some traumatic event, I can recall it in detail. I did eventually share it, only to be laughed at and called spooky. Maybe you can share or not. Please don't use my name. I would never venture into the bottom again without a slug-loaded shotgun. And you could kiss camping out there goodbye. It just wasn't fun anymore. Like I said, I don't know what I saw. Your channel is partially dedicated to Bigfoot, and I've only heard of any in Central Texas. Maybe it was a gorilla. There you go. There's one hell of a childhood memory. What did Grandpa know? What did Grandpa know? Welcome to the club. There's another one. There's another one. All right, scrolling down. What else? What's this one? How long is this? Oh, it's not too. This isn't too long, I don't think. Okay, going in. I'm going in. Mark this as red. Voices in treetops and Turtle Island. There's a place in the Sierra Nevada mountains, probably thousands of places, but this place is a small lake. It sits around 7,000 feet above sea level. My parents took us there when we were kids. It was also in the hunt zone we hunted. When some of us grew up, there were dinners that we went to for breakfast. Oh, diners. When some of us grew up, there were diners that we went to for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And what I remember most about those diners when I was a kid was the sound of human voices from every corner of the diner. If there was music coming from overhead speakers, it was drowned out by the conversations from table to table or seat to seat at the counter chairs. The place we'd go to when we were kids was a small lake. I'll include a photo of the lake. The photo was taken in the 70s. On the west side of the lake is a clump of evergreen trees and very old aspens. As a kid, I stayed away from that side of the lake. I didn't like how it felt. The other sides of the lake in the sunlight were just fine. We'd play in that water in the eastern side of the lake with our yellow lab, and she would tow us around in the water while floating on those cheap water mattresses while holding onto her tail. We had lots of fun at that lake. Just stay away from the western side. I'd taken my nephew to the lake when he was only 12 years old. He's 21 now. When I walked with him around to the western side of the lake, to the old aspen grove, I heard voices in the treetops of the aspens. I could feel the blood drain from my face, silently asking myself, how could you forget that? When I looked up, the voices immediately stopped. Like voices in a coffee shop, I can hear the conversation but not understand the words. And as I looked up and the voices stopped, I could hear the leaves of the aspens chatter in the breeze like aspen leaves do. When I looked to see where my nephew was, the chatter returned, drowning out the sound of the leaves rustling in the breeze. Even then, my nephew has a habit of not listening. To each place I had taken him, I told him to stay in sight. Don't walk off. I know what's out here, you don't. There wasn't a third time of me telling him this. I pulled out a large tourist bell and a carabiner and put it on his belt. That was the only souvenir I had from Alaska I felt was worth the price. It worked out in the Sierras just fine. You are an outdoorsman. You spent probably 90% of your life in the backcountry. I'm sure you've had to come across this at least once. You can't tell me that your ears do not know the difference from aspen leaves rustling in the wind compared to a mountain stream and the sound that makes. I have my ideas on how someone like Ron Moorhead can hear a car door slam at 8,000 feet in the mountains, and there isn't a parking lot around for 20 miles. I'll keep that idea to myself for now, even though I kind of mentioned how in earlier writings to you. Water is everything. From our surroundings to the blood in our veins to the storms that instantly manifest in one of Dave P's missing stories, it's a multi-dimensional time marker, as well as much more. With the titles of two of the Native American sourced books I mentioned to you, pick one of them up and read about the INIPI Sweat Lodge ceremony. ENP. P means lodge, N is the breath of life. I'll include one photo from the 70s of that lake, along with a photo from Wisdom and Power of how a holy man used the sweat lodge. There have been many people making the news over the last couple of decades attempting an ENP ceremony, but only because they've gotten people killed or sent to the hospital. It's a sweat bath. Too bad some people don't have the common sense to use that safely. And by the way, I never heard of Ron Moorhead until Dave P's Missing Hunters DVD, and I screamed with joy at the TV screen when Ron mentioned lights in the wilderness. Yes, I've been in a cultural vacuum. In 1998, my wife and I decided not to pay for television anymore because there was never anything on we cared to see. I know how my stories sound. No normie would ever think they were anything but an insult to human intelligence. And one last thing before I go. Most Native Americans call North America Turtle Island. If you want to see the turtle, go to Google Earth. Then pull back from planet Earth until you can see all of North America. If you look at the shorelines under the water, you will see Florida is one leg of the turtle. Its tail is what Mexico is today. And at one point, Baja California was the other leg of the turtle. The head of the turtle looks directly at what we know as Greenland. Turtle Island was a real thing before a shift in the Earth and probably before the last ice age began. That's interesting, and I have never heard of that before. And what sleuths are going to look into that? And how would they know it looked like that? Questions, right? Thanks again, Steve. P.S. I've been looking at these places in Google Earth since the Caldor fire. The fire went through those areas, but the exact locations of these events, the fire didn't touch them. Kind of like Ron Moorhead's Sierra Camp. Fire raged through, but that location didn't get burned. Interesting. There you go. I gotta check out more emails from you. Obviously, I get so many. I can't. I would have to be an absolute, an oddity to be able to read any one of these emails and just put a name to it. Most of them. Sometimes I can, but it's tough. So many. That's a very interesting mention there, isn't it? Turtle Island, North America. Take a look at it. Take a look. Can I do one more? I think I can do one more. All right, one more. And then it's time to pack. Packing. Fellow guide and outdoorsman and a lifelong experiencer with Sasquatch. Hello there. I was drawn to your videos pertaining Sasquatch and knew from an instant you're no bullshit guy. I'm very happy to see real people opening their mind to the deeper understandings and mysteries of this planet. Good job for speaking your mind. I have had experiences with Sasquatch and paranormal since I was a young boy. I could write a book with all my interactions and teachings, and they're still going on. My stories can stretch the mind, and I don't bullshit at all. I have a fairly deep understanding on the Sasquatch people from my interactions, but still do not have a definite answer. Many orbs, mind speak, and paranormal activity, along with big lights in the sky around when the beings are around on many occasions. I do not have the time to write all this down, nor do you have the time to read these stories. If you're ever up for a phone chat or in the Edmonton area, I'd be happy to talk with you and share my thoughts and experiences with you. But for sure, you're on the right track, and I recommend you try to connect to people who have real interactions, not just finding tracks and tree knocks. With many, we can paint a bigger picture. There's your phone number. All right. Mark this as look into, and we'll see what you got. Maybe you want to come on here and talk to me on the channel once I get home. All right. We'll get a hold of you for sure. What do you think? Got another short one here, maybe? Squeeze one more in? All right. There's no time. Just got informed. There's no more time. Gotta go. Gotta go. I got I got so many videos on my phone. Quick ones of things we saw and did on this trip. I never post them on social media. Any of my social media. I just don't seem to share my personal life online. I don't have a need to. Especially these days as well, you're going on vacation. Who needs to see that shit when people are struggling just to get groceries? So I just keep our personal stuff to myself. I like to share hunting and the outdoors and fishing and the knowledge and encourage people to do what they love to do for the most part. But that's why I don't really share much. But maybe later on I will, who knows, maybe later on I'll just make a quick video and narrate and tell you what we saw and what we did and some of the funny moments or the eye-opener moments or the what the hell moments for anybody who may be curious of what goes on over here on this side of the planet. It's definitely, I don't know what you could describe being over here is. It's just so many different flavors. There's so many extremely different flavors of people existing in this country. It's wild to watch as being an observer. But anyway, I'm babbling. Share my story at howtohunt.com. That's where you get your truth shared with the people, word for word through me. And if you got something significant you feel you may have a great conversation with me about, maybe, possibly, email me, because we're going to fire up the man cave when I get back, and we're going to get it stuffed with people having conversations with me about truth. All right? And one more quick note. A lot of people still seem to think you need, that's a four-letter word is need, right? Four-letter word, need. You need something from what's called today the government. You don't. You need nothing from those scumbags in any shape, way, or form. You don't need anything from them. More so when I'm talking about this topic, you don't need them to tell you shit about life or what's going on for truth. You don't need to hear nothing from anybody who's in that gangster organization called government, okay? Nothing. What you need is us, the people. You need to share your truth with the people and get your truth from the people. That's the only way to do it, all right? It's the only way. Anybody from GOV, you kick to the curb and piss on them. To put it in a polite way. Okay, later.